Amazon crushed earnings and the stock is up 6% after hours. Let's go through their third quarter presentation slides. Third quarter revenue, $159 billion, just for one quarter. That's up 11% when you compare it to the same quarter last year. In the third quarter of 2023, it was $143 billion. Fourth quarter of 2023 was higher than this quarter, but the fourth quarter is generally a higher quarter due to the holidays. They have three segments: North America, that's their e-commerce in North America, $95 billion. International e-commerce, $35 billion. AWS, Amazon Web Services, $27 billion. That's where most of their profit is, their cloud computing segment. Their revenue for the trailing 12 months is $620 billion, up 12% from the same time period last year. I'm pretty sure they're going to be the first company to hit $1 trillion of annual revenue. It's probably going to happen in 3 or 4 years. And here's a breakdown of their revenue by segment. 17% is in AWS. They had record operating income, $17 billion just for the quarter, up 56% from last year. And for the trailing 12 months, operating income of $61 billion. Look how much their growth is. It was $26 billion last year. It went up 130%. I bought a lot of Amazon in May 2020 at $112 a share. And within like 6 months, I was up 50-60%. About a year and a half ago, I was down on my investment. So it was really frustrating to see the stock come down so much. But as you know, in the past 12 to 18 months, the stock has gone through the roof. And it's going to go even higher, especially with great earnings like this. Quarterly net income, $15 billion, up 55%. $15 billion a profit for one quarter. Unbelievable. That's a record for them. Trailing 12-month net income up 148%, $50 billion up from $20 billion. This is just unreal numbers. The stock is up 6% after hours today. On Friday, when you're watching this video, it'll probably go up 10 to 15%. Their biggest segment is North America e-commerce. Revenue of $95 billion, a little less than the fourth quarter of 2023, but up 9% from the same time period last year. Operating income, $5.7 billion, up 31%. So the margins aren't that great. $5 billion of operating income with $95 billion of revenue. So the margin is a little over 5%. Trailing 12-month revenue, $377 billion, operating income, $22 billion. Their international e-commerce, revenue $36 billion, up 12%, a little less than the fourth quarter of 2023. They're finally profitable in international. For a while, they were running at a loss, even as recently as the fourth quarter of 2023. But they finally pulled it together. Now they have some income. Really low margins, I think around 3%. And their trailing 12-month revenue in international is $140 billion, operating income of $2.1 billion. That's below a 2% margin. This is where their profits are in their cloud computing business. Revenue, the highest ever, $27 billion. Operating income, the highest ever, $10 billion, up 50% from last year. Last year was $7 billion. Amazing growth. Trailing 12-month revenue, $100 billion. Operating income, $36 billion. Look at their margins this quarter, 10 over 27. That's like a 35% margin. So $10 billion of operating income, which is more than North America and international combined. The revenue in North America, $95 billion, international, $35 billion. So $130 billion of revenue with less operating income. Free cash flow up 123% to $48 billion. They're still investing a lot into CapEx, but their free cash flow is going up a ton. It was higher the last 2 quarters though. If you take their free cash flow minus finance leases and financing obligations, it's $44 billion. Still up 182% from last year because they lease a lot of warehouses. They have many distribution centers and warehouses all over the world. If you take their free cash flow less equipment finance leases and less principal repayments of financing obligations, it's $46 billion, up 128%. Their shares outstanding are pretty steady, up a little. It was 10.3 billion, now it's 10.5 billion. They also give stock-based awards to their employees, so if you add that, it's almost 10.9 billion. They're growing revenue and profits without dilution. It would be nice to see them buying back stock, but they don't need to buy back stock because they're so profitable. I'd rather see them use money to grow their business instead of buying back their business. Here's their operating cash flow for the trailing 12 months. Their free cash flow from Q4 2023 to Q3 2024 is $113 billion. It grows every single quarter. Operating cash flow is a cash that's remaining after running your day-to-day business, after paying for all your expenses. They still spent a ton in PP&E, $65 billion. So free cash flow, $48 billion. This is for the trailing 12 months. It was higher the last 2 quarters because they're spending so much more into CapEx. Lots of AI spending. Let's look at their income statement for the quarter. Product sales, $68 billion, up from $63 billion. Service sales from $80 billion to $91 billion. So total sales, $158 billion just for the quarter, up from $143 billion. All the expenses directly tied to generating the revenue is $81 billion. Fulfillment expenses, $25 billion. That's when they receive product, package it, and ship it, all those costs. Technology and infrastructure, $22 billion. Marketing, $11 billion. G&A, $3 billion. G&A is all costs not directly tied to making a product or providing a service. It's expenses of the day-to-day operations, like the salary for HR, IT, also the rent for the corporate office. Total expenses, $141 billion. Operating income, $17 billion. It went from $11 billion to $17 billion. They receive more interest than they pay on their debt. They receive $1.3 billion, they pay $600 million because they have so much cash on their balance sheet. Here's their balance sheet, $73 billion of cash, $13 billion of marketable securities, $87 billion of cash. Pre-tax income, $18 billion, taxes, $2.7 billion, net income, $15 billion, up more than 50% from last year. EPS, $1.46. Up from 96 cents. Shares outstanding are up a little bit from 10.3 billion to 10.5 billion. Here's a breakdown of their revenue by segment. They have 3 segments, North America, International, and AWS, the cloud computing. They break down each category into net sales, operating expenses, and operating income. So sales in North America went from 88 billion to 95 billion. Operating income went up a little bit from 4.3 billion to 5.7 billion, a modest growth. International revenue went from 32 billion to 36 billion, but they went from a loss of 95 million to a gain of 1.3 billion. And the big winner is AWS. Sales went from 23 billion to 27 billion, and all that was profit because their expenses barely went up. So their operating income went from 7 billion to over 10 billion. They added 4 billion of revenue on the top line, but then on the middle line, they added 3 billion of profit. Almost all the additional revenue is profit. So if you want to get really good at reading financial statements, click on the video in the top right corner. Thanks for watching.